Good morning, everybody. Hey, welcome to the middle of the week, July 9th. Hope you're doing well this week as we've had some good days, some bad days this week. We'll see what we can continue as Trump talks about tariffs and how that affects our markets. Not much economic news coming out today. We'll talk about something when Dave joins us here in just a few seconds. Until then, don't forget that risk is something that you can control within your portfolio. That's why I developed the core retirement design. Give me a call, 863-382-0037. It lets you and I spend 30 minutes on the phone to make sure you're on the path to the retirement you always dreamed of. Hey, we got Dave coming up next.
105.7 Light FM. That is Journey there. I'm Morning Dave. We're at 78 degrees here in Sebring. We'll see a high this afternoon. Not a record, but up around 95 degrees, which is kind of like the outer rings of Hades.
Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Second Half Financial Partners, LLC does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.
You do that. The tax or legal advisor you probably want to talk to is Phillip Statler from Statler Financial Services. We do it every morning at this time, and he's on the phone now. Good morning, Phillip. How are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, Dave. Still a few technical issues, but we're working through them. And we've had to actually resort to the actual phone today.
Old-fashioned technology is sometimes best. We're looking at I would say, a muted reaction to the fact that the 9th of July is here, and a whole pile of confiscatory tariffs went on to a lot of companies, including our friends in South Korea and Japan, where we buy a whole boatload of cars from, among other stuff. And gosh, I'd say 165 points down on the Dow yesterday and only 4.5 down on the S&P really was a pretty muted reaction compared to what happened at the first part of April. Wouldn't you agree?
I absolutely would, Dave. And the Russell 2000 actually, man, it skyrocketed compared to everybody else. It was up like 0.6%.
Yeah, the S&P actually eked out 0.03% yesterday, or not, the NASDAQ rather, was up almost $6. Yeah, you look at it, and compared to the reaction that we had in April when everybody said, oh my God, the world is going to end, we're going to sell everything that isn't nailed down, I think we're almost getting used to this negotiating in public strategy that President Trump has, don't you think?
Well, at least we're not as ruffled by it when it happens.
Yeah, nobody really likes the upset, but I was saying yesterday when we started out before we got cut off, I don't like it because it's upsetting as all get out, but the output by and large seems to end up positive, as goofy as it sounds while it's going through this negotiating in public and threatening everything short of nuclear war. But if we don't have our way, we seem to end up pretty much getting a settlement that works, and the economy is holding up without heavy inflation, no big spikes in inflation. The tariff revenue is looking relatively good, and while I don't necessarily like the process, the output really doesn't sound like it's going all that badly, does it?
Yeah, at this point, it doesn't, Dave. We've relented enough when things get really tough that we've been able to negotiate. And I say relent. That's probably not the right word for President Trump, but he's brought people to the table, and they're making some headway. I'm not sure it's always the headway we want. We make fun of Vietnam around here. That again, we're paying a 20% tariff on goods they send us, so we're paying more. They don't have any tariff on our stuff, so they're paying less. But their people can't really afford our goods. So does it really make sense? Are we really helping ourselves? It sounds good on paper, but yeah. Not sure.
And it does help. It does help to remember that from the places that we do buy a lot of stuff, when we negotiate downward, we're just negotiating downward to that flat 10% number that he's got, which is why you and I, when we look it up each time and we look at tariff revenue that's coming in, Well, gosh, some of the junk that he promised on it is actually coming to pass. We're making some pretty good money off of tariffs from countries that are
More than
saying,
what we
"Oh no,
were, more than what
yeah,
we were making, right?
yeah." I mean, like I said, the economist in me, and that's my background. It's almost one of those biblical sayings that a tariff is at best the second or third best solution to any problem. So you avoid tariffs whenever possible. But at this point in time, it's making us money, and we're still buying stuff, and we're not seeing a lot of inflation. So at this point in time, I'm kind of entering wait and see mode. Evidently, some of the big companies are starting to get a little bit more optimistic as well. They're starting to re-project the Standard & Poor's 500 for the end of the year. Bank of America and Goldman Sachs yesterday said, "Oh, it's going to be better than we thought." So they were saying that we're going to end the year up around 6,600 in the Standard & Poor's, and that's about 5-6% better than we're at right now. And where we're at right now is nosebleed level.
Well, that's true, and let's face it, that I'm really concerned about what forward-looking earnings look like, earnings per share looks like, given the whole tariff situation and what's that going to do to earnings in the future, and we'll wait to see what that does, but that could have some impacts on the market.
Absolutely. I mean, the tariff expense is getting absorbed somewhere, and it's probably getting absorbed to a large extent in the profit margin for the companies that are doing the importing. So, what probably the net effect of this, if it doesn't turn into inflation, is going to be higher multiples as far as price earnings ratios on the big stocks that do a lot of importing.
That's right, and that's if you start looking at what those should be versus what they are, it could have an impact on stock prices.
hmm It could very well. Big tariff discussion that came out of a televised cabinet meeting yesterday that I had to make note of. We're sitting there listening to this freewheeling cabinet meeting going on, and I start wondering, God, I'm glad none of my staff meetings when I was in management ever looked like this. Trump announced a 50% tariff on copper imports, threatened 200% tariff on pharmaceuticals, just in the middle of a cabinet meeting. And he
Yeah.
just threw in, oh, by the way, I think Jay Paulson ought to quit right away. Like I said, I watched the TV broadcast on the thing, and the only thing I was, thank God my staff meetings never looked like this when I was running a company.
Yeah, I tell you, they broke the mold on him.
It is true, and like I said, I look at it, I make fun of it, I shake my head, and the output ends up not being too terribly bad. It is a slow news day. We're going to start getting a few early earnings tomorrow, though, because companies like Delta and ConAgra and Levi's are going to give us some reports tomorrow. So earnings season's beginning, not with the usual suspects, but it seems like Delta has been the one that's been breaking the mold as the lead stock on earnings season. It's going to be interesting to see what things have happened over the last 3 months, won't it?
It will be, and two of those will be before the market. Levi Strauss actually is after the market closes tomorrow, but still, we'll have some earnings, at least something to talk about tomorrow with some of these earnings coming out. I'm trying to see if there's anything else really tomorrow that is WD-40, but it comes out after the market closes too. Kind of a household name. And I'm looking for the banks. I just don't know. They must be early next week because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
seeing banks coming out anytime
Yeah.
soon. So
Yeah, it's really kind of odd, except for the initial jobless claims coming out tomorrow. Friday, it says no notable earnings and no notable economic releases. So we're going to take a vacation after talking about Delta and WD-40 and then wait till next week for the flood of bank reports to come in, which is semi-interesting. Tidbits I pulled up before we started talking this morning. We always note job cuts, and it's kind of interesting when it happens in the high-tech field. Intel says they're going to cut over 500 jobs in Oregon from one of their big plants there as part of their layoff plan. So the employment market is still not 100% secure, even in the high-tech sector, is it?
no, it's not. I mean, as tariffs and expenses and inflation put pressure on companies, they're going to become more productive with the employees they have and try to cut anything extra off the employment front.
Yeah, absolutely. Something just came up on my ticker. It said a big name advisor says avoiding crypto is now more speculative than buying crypto is, which prompted me to look at the value. And I didn't notice this, but Bitcoin has, number one, kind of stabilized. Number two, it's back up just shy of 110,000 again, and it's looking relatively stable by Bitcoin standards these days. Maybe crypto is with those ETFs that are doing cryptocurrency on the main big board now. Maybe it finally is beginning to stabilize and become an investment that some people ought to occasionally look at.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm still a little skeptical on crypto, but it is what it is, and I hate when I don't understand something. And that's really crypto, right? But yeah, it is becoming a small sliver in portfolios. I mean, I even have one portfolio that we use that doesn't own it now, but it can own it if things are popular for it, or if it comes time to put it in the portfolio, it has the ability to put it in a portfolio. So yeah, it's something I think we're just gonna have to get used to.
It kind of, sort of, in the process. It's intriguing only on the grounds that as it becomes more and more stable, where a 0.6% change in a day, which is what happened yesterday, when that becomes a substantial change and it looks like a stock market index, well, it starts getting slightly more interesting. I guess the fair way to put it is, you and I have always taken it and said, it's, invest in crypto with the money you'd take down to Seminole Brighton and put in the slot machines. Well, maybe it's one step removed from that. It's a little up the ladder from that, but not quite up to the point where you do it in a blue chip portfolio, right?
Exactly.
Well, resetting the table, it was a mixed bag yesterday, and a muted response to the beginning of some pretty substantial tariff decisions. 45 minutes before we open this morning, what have we got going?
So right now on the index side, Dave, we got a lot of green ink. The Dow is up 0.4%. The S&P 500 is up 0.3, and the Nasdaq 100 is up almost 1/4 point. So some good movement there. On the other side, we're seeing a lot of red. Silver's down 1/3%, as well as gold, and then crude oil actually is basically flat, down 3 cents. So it's at $68.29 a barrel right now.
That doesn't sound good. I still expect to see some decrease off of that OPEC production increase, and I don't know why it's not happening. Looking overseas, the Asian rim was mixed, but it was driven down by a bit by the mainland Chinese markets, where they're not particularly happy about China coming to South Korea and Japan's defense by threatening supply chain disruptions. So the Asian rim market had a tinge of red to it this morning at the close. Europe, on the other hand, is recovering a little. Maybe somebody's finally getting calm over the tariff negotiations as well there. The average European index is up by about 0.2% halfway through their trading day today. Getting my retirement together into a plan that I can be pretty sure is actually going to happen takes eyes that are better than mine. How do I find you to use your eyes to help me retire, Phillip?
Dave, it's simple. They just have to give us a call at 863-382-0037 to schedule just a 30-minute phone call where we'll talk about where they are, where they want to get to, and how they can get there. And just give us a call. 30 minutes, my time, ask questions, whatever it is. And then this weekend, join us for the Statler Financial Radio Show, 6 a.m. and noon on Saturday, 10 a.m. Sunday morning on Highlands News Talk, 7:30 a.m. and 95.3 FM.
And Highlands News Talk, and I'm sorry, newstalk730am.com. Almost forgot my own dang website this morning. It's been one of those mornings. You have a good day, my friend. I'll see you tomorrow, all right?
All right, take care.
Thank you. It's 105.7 Light FM and Statler Financial Services.